Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a comparison between the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip on the left and the Galaxy Z Fold 2 on the right. Now, these are two very different devices. They're both premium, they're both expensive. The Z Flip has actually come down in price since launch, which was back in February of this year. It's now retailing for a little under $1,200 US, at least last that I checked. That's down from roughly $1,400, a little under that. The Z Fold 2, of course, brand new and retails for $2,000 US. Now, many of you have asked which I prefer more, and here's the thing. I actually like both of these phones a lot in different ways. So, first and foremost, the beauty of the Z Flip, of course, is that you have a phone that has the same height physically. It's just as tall as the Z Fold 2, and it's actually almost the same height as, you can see right here, as the Note 20 Ultra, okay? Note 20 Ultra looks a lot brighter for a reason. Brightness is not all the way up. I'll correct that right now. But now you can see, very similar. Of course, the Note 20 Ultra is a little bit wider. But the beauty of the Z Flip is that you can flip it. And then, of course, you've got something palm-friendly, pocket-friendly. It's a little bit thick, but of course, where I'm about to go with this is just as thick, actually a little bit thicker. So the beauty of this device is that I feel like some will view it as a fashion accessory, others will view it perfectly as just form and function meeting, and that is because it delivers the large form factor phones that we've come to use on a regular basis, which is a 6.7-inch high-res AMOLED display that easily folds up and goes in your pocket in a way, of course, that the Note 20 Ultra just can't accomplish, and of course the Z Fold 2, or the first gen Fold, cannot accomplish. And I did also cover the first gen Razr from Motorola, which was just a horrible device. The new version is on the way. I don't know that I'll even take a look at it because I don't feel Motorola's taken things seriously, but Samsung absolutely has, and they should, because they're really at the cutting or bleeding edge of foldable displays here in 2020 and before that. So you have a solid processor in here, the Snapdragon 855 Plus. It's not flagship like the 865 Plus here, but certainly good enough that you're not going to see a huge performance gap. 8 gigs of RAM, wireless charging, NFC. You've got 3 cameras, 2 on the front. You have a little LED, it's an OLED readout for notifications. There's a flash, of course, and you can even use this in selfie mode to take pictures, and you'll see a little bit of what these cameras are shooting, but it's a little bit ridiculous. But at the end of the day, its battery life is solid, form factor is really unmatched, fingerprint scanner right there, volume rocker. They did come out with a 5G version, which if you're in a 5G market, that's a good thing. And you've got a front-facing camera. All the cameras are decent, they're not best in class, but that's the concept here, is that it's a compromise. You're getting something unlike anything on the market that will easily fit into your pocket, purse, whatever, bag, and it just works. It's really lightweight, solid construction. I mean, if I pull this off, it's all glass. It feels and looks good, and it operates pretty much perfectly. The display is coated with Samsung's form of glass. It's a very thin layer of glass. It feels more like plastic. You do still have a crease, but overall, I have no complaints about this phone other than the fact that we don't have any IP rating. So water and dust resistance is off the menu. You come to the Z Fold, you basically have now the other end of the spectrum, is that instead of people who want a small device that can also give them a large experience, which is what the Flip represents, you've got the Fold, which is already large in its folded profile, and it just becomes even bigger. And, you know, this is, I feel like, for a completely different audience than, of course, the Flip, because, well, there's a huge size difference. Pricing, now there's a fairly big gap because, as I stated, this is $2,000. This is only a little over $1,000 now. If you go with the 5G, a little bit more. But you are getting better specifications all around. You're getting better cameras. You're really getting 2 phones in one. And that's what I would say about the Fold overall, is that when I'm using the Fold, I feel like I have 2 devices, because When I don't want the tablet, I have this 6.23-inch touchscreen, which is also an AMOLED. Very nice. It is narrow, but very similar to what we're getting here. It's just a little bit more narrow than what you have with the Z Flip. You have essentially the same quality front-facing camera right there at the top center, and you can take calls, make calls, do everything, surf the web right here on this interface if you never want to open it. Granted, it's bigger, it's heavier, but as I said, better cameras. You see 3 cameras, essentially the same array from the S20 line of phones. No 8K video, but 4K is perfectly fine for me. I don't have any 8K displays in the house. And then in addition to that, besides this camera, you do of course have another selfie camera here, but you don't even have to use those because you can actually use these as a selfie camera, as I've mentioned in other videos, which is part of what I love about this device when it's opened up, and use the front display as the display that you need to see what you're shooting on. So you don't really have to use the selfie cameras. And then when you do want something bigger, you've got this 7.6-inch 120 hertz display that is best in class. And yes, it also has a crease, as with all these folding phones. Same material used as, it's a substrate, but it's glass of some form. No IP rating, but as I mentioned, Snapdragon 865 Plus, and then 12 gigs of RAM as opposed to the 8 over here. And then you also, of course, have wireless charging, NFC, basically everything under the sun except for that IP rating. Now, neither of these support inking, of course. Both have power share, so if you have another device that needs to be charged up, you can enable it, place it on that device, and it'll share its battery. 4,500 milliamp hour here, 3,500 here. Neither will get through the whole day, but they come pretty close. It really depends with the Fold how much you use the internal screen as opposed to the 6.23 external screen. I personally prefer the Fold because it's a more dynamic product, but it's also far more expensive. And at the end of the day, the Flip is actually what led me to really get comfortable with no longer having an S Pen, because my daily driver historically has always been the Note, because that has always been Samsung's top-of-the-line flagship device. Well, those days are pretty much fading, because now folding devices are the flagship, top-of-the-line, bleeding-edge tech, and even if we didn't get the best cameras under the sun with either of these phones, they don't have true competitors on the market, in my opinion. Both of these devices, by the way, have 256 gigs of internal storage. I didn't mention that. It is not expandable. I wish that would change, but it's just not in the cards for now. And of course, this does have 5G. In my market, no 5G support, so it really doesn't matter to me. But from a future-proofing standpoint, for the extra money, I'd rather have it than not have it, of course. I wouldn't have said that 2 years ago. In fact, when people asked me 2 years ago, is it worth getting 5G handsets? I said no. And even today, I would make the argument it isn't worth it, even if you necessarily have 5G support in your market. Of course, in the pandemic, you're not going to be doing as much traveling, but when you do travel, you're not going to have 5G support everywhere. We're years away from that. When that happens, then 5G is going to be, of course, something I will recommend, of course, to everyone, because why get a phone that can't do what you pay for it to do? But at the end of the day, both of these are fantastic devices. But as I stated at the beginning of the video, I do feel like they target completely different audiences, because one is incredibly compact and becomes larger. It doesn't have the benefit of really having much of an external display. This is the polar opposite. You have, as I stated, what I feel like is 2 phones in one, because you don't have to go to the large internal display. You can do that at your leisure. I find that I can go a good portion of the day just utilizing this display, because it really does give me the experience I would expect from a traditional flagship candy bar style device. A little bit narrow, but still completely plausible. And then the one thing I didn't mention is the hinge. The first gen Fold could only be open or closed. There was no in between. Now that this is the Z Fold, because of the hinge design, you have the ability to put it down on a desk like this, just as you could with this device. And I actually think that that is great. It means that you can actually essentially watch content, split screen this way. This can be your keyboard. This can be whatever you're, browsing or watching. The same applies here, but you have a lot less screen real estate, and that is an issue. No question about that. And that's why I say completely different audiences. Another thing you need to know is that audio quality on these devices is very different. Mono speaker, stereo speakers on the Fold. The Fold has a speaker here and a speaker here. And the audio is pretty good. I mean, it gets very loud. And that's a benefit, again, to the size of this device that just doesn't exist with the Z Flip. But overall, I don't think you can go wrong with either one of these. It's really a matter of personal preference. I would rather have the 2-in-1, and that's what the Fold 2 represents to me, as I've stated over and over through this video. It means I have the best of both worlds. I want to use it as a candy bar, I've got it. I want something bigger, I have a 7.6-inch tablet in my pocket or in my hand, and it goes anywhere. You have to be careful with these. I don't feel like I did in the first gen that they need to be babied, and that's because I've had this since launch, the Z Flip, and I've had absolutely no problems. So I don't anticipate having problems here. And I've even realized, which no one really talks about, and Samsung hasn't designed it in software, that it's also cool to watch content on this display, the external, but if you open the phone up too much, of course, it will go to the internal display. So essentially, if you have it like this and you're watching content, it's just another way to use that Z Flip hinge that even Samsung has not thought about, because if you do go to 90 degrees, it does revert back to the internal display. So maybe Samsung will watch this video and realize that's another way this phone can be used that they didn't think about, just like the selfie camera capability. You know, they were so worried about giving us so many selfie cameras, and now even on the first gen Fold, you're going to be able to do the same thing you can here, which is use this display with these cameras to shoot selfies. So again, they are both lifestyle devices. I'm not going to call them anything other than that. You know, both screens are supposed to have self-healing capability in terms of if your nail were to scratch the display, it will regenerate to a certain degree. I don't recommend putting nails on either of these. It's just not a good idea. Why do it? You know, you don't need to do it. I mean, who uses a nail? If you have long nails, obviously it's going to be a challenge to use these. I don't generally have long nails, so it's not really an issue. But either way, both devices are fantastic. They're both expensive, and they really do represent the best of what Samsung has to offer. I would say that about the Note 20 Ultra, but the reality is that the Note 20 Ultra is ultimately a product of evolution rather than revolution, and the folding phones, these are the revolutionary products that Samsung has to offer us now. So again, I miss my S Pen, but working with the Z Flip as my daily driver since launch, I got used to and enjoying the convenience of having this. And not just because it's satisfying to hang up a call by folding it. It's really about pocketability. And this is, of course, again, the polar opposite, but it's still more pocketable than the Note 20 Ultra, which is just so big and so wide that it sticks out of almost every pocket I have, or just feels like I'm carrying around a brick. Even though it's thinner than this, than the Z Fold 2, it's not thinner by that much. And again, this is like having two phones. And the compromises that are made, I am totally content with. You know, not having the greatest cameras. Anyone who watches my channel knows I'm camera centric, so I would like to have the greatest, but it's definitely, in my opinion, better to have the best of both worlds in a single device, which is what this offers and also what this offers. Now, in the second gen of this device, I'm assuming we're going to get a larger exterior display than this, just like we did with the second gen Fold. The first gen had a 4.6-inch display. Now we have a 6.23-inch display, and that's because Samsung listens to consumers, just like Sony, who I also love to cover, because companies that listen, at least I think they listen to most concepts and criticism, they get the products right, and consumers reward them with their money. That's just the way life works, right? Companies that decide they're going to write the rules, they generally pay the price, except for Apple. So, and that'll change over time too. No one is bulletproof on this planet. At any rate, that wraps things up. Again, two great devices. The Note 20 Ultra is great too. I will be doing a comparison between these two phones right here, because I think a lot of people are trying to decide between the Note 20 Ultra and the Z Fold 2. But ultimately, again, this video was about the Flip versus the Fold, and while I love both, the Fold is going to be my new daily driver, and the Flip is going to go to a family member. And that's pretty much it. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button, and as usual, please feel free to subscribe, and please stay safe. Later.